Courtney. This is Something Positive for Positive People, and I'm here with
Marie.
Marie. How old are you?
I am 41.
What is your sex?
I'm female.
What is your ethnicity?
I'm Caucasian.
So, Caucasian. Are you like Irish, German, or anything?
I'm a mutt.
Oh.
I mean, literally, my mom's part Indian and all kinds of stuff. My dad is Irish, Scottish, German. I'm just a mutt.
So we can just say you're other.
I'm other.
Ooh. What is your sexual preference?
I prefer men.
Highest level of education?
College educated.
All right. Now, where do you live? You can tell me you live in the universe. You can narrow it down to a galaxy. You can narrow it down to a planet.
I live in the St. Louis metropolitan area.
Oh, okay. That works. And what is your condition?
I have HSV1 and HSV2.
And how long were you diagnosed?
About 20 years ago.
That is not possible because you're like 26 or something like that.
Nope.
And what is your career field? Can you tell us that?
I'm self-employed. I'm an entrepreneur.
Oh, wait, what do you do? Ish.
Business services. I provide services to businesses.
What kind of services? Can you not tell me that? We can be as vague as you need to be.
That's about as vague as I need to be.
Oh, is it like consulting? Or
yes,
what?
You can say consulting.
Okay, all right.
Sure.
Now, that's not like a kink thing, is it?
No.
Like, yeah, I do these business services.
No,
Right.
not at all.
All right, so you were diagnosed for 20 years?
Yep.
And how did you find out?
Well, it was the guy I was living with at the time. I was in the military, and he went home to Texas, and he came back, and he actually just had like a couple of little bumps on his lower stomach in like his hairline. And,
Head hairline or
the hairline going between his belly button and, okay. The good stuff. We lived together, we had sex, and then I noticed it, and I, didn't think anything about it. And he went to the doctor a couple days later and found out that while he was in Texas cheating on me with his ex-girlfriend, that he had actually acquired HSV1, but it was HSV1 in the wrong spot. Mm-hmm. So since it was on the front of his stomach, a couple weeks later, I ended up with it on basically the front of my stomach in the lower region in my pubic hair. So that's where it all started.
Oh, wow.
But it was, HSV1 originally.
Okay, so how did it become HSV2?
Just over the last 20 years of dating, I've dated people who have it, people who don't, and that kind of thing. And so along the way, somewhere, I've had my doctor test me again, and I do test positive now for both. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure I got it from someone who already had it.
So it wasn't really a big deal when you found out, oh my God, I have the other one too? It was just like,
oh gosh,
okay,
no. Uh-huh. It wasn't a big deal it was a big deal when I first got it because I was throwing his stuff out of my apartment, and there wasn't much education back then. There wasn't internet. There weren't groups. There was nothing. And there was so much misinformation back then. But at the time, it was bad, but it still kind of wasn't that bad because doctors always told you, as long as you don't have any blisters, you're not contagious. So anytime I dated someone, I just said, I have this, but as long as I don't have any blisters, you can't get it. Okay. And that's how I dated from that point on. And I had no idea about shedding or anything back then.
So when you were diagnosed, did they give you like a hieroglyphic message saying this is what this means for you, or what happened?
They basically it was a really kind of callous doctor, and he basically just said, you have herpes, and this is the medication you take, and have a nice day. And I was like, oh my. And so I called a friend of mine who was a pharmacist, actually before the diagnosis, and she gave me a little bit more information, and the medication can calm it down and whatever, but there just wasn't much information back then, and I don't think doctors really knew much back then about it either.
I almost feel like at that point in time, it may have been better because now there's so much information, mm-hmm. and there's so much misinformation. So of what you were told versus what you have experience-wise, like what would you say you wish that you would have known when you were first diagnosed versus when you were actually diagnosed?
Well, I mean, I wish I would have known about shedding back then, obviously, because I feel bad that I lied to people. I didn't lie intentionally.
You were just passing on the information that you were
Yes.
given from medical
Yeah.
professionals.
But then, over 20 years, I've realized what not a big deal this is, especially compared to so many other things in life. And it really just doesn't affect my life at all anymore. So I wish that somebody could have told me then that in 20 years, like, this will be the least of your worries.
Right.
Because when you first, you're in your early 20s and you're trying to date, that's not what you want to hear
Not
at
at
all.
all.
You're like, oh my gosh, this is nuts. What am I going to do? And so I wish somebody would have told me how, I mean, even back then, they didn't really tell you, like, it's the same thing as cold sores. You know what I mean? They didn't tell you that. Well, nobody was scared of cold sores.
Right.
They were scared of herpes.
And it's crazy how you tell someone, yeah, I get cold sores, and it's like, oh, okay, it's not a big
Yeah.
deal. But then
Well,
if
don't
you
kiss
say
me when you've
it's-
got one.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
And now I don't know this, but if you have cold sores on your mouth, is there still shedding when
Yes.
there isn't? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's
And that's
important.
that's actually, I read somewhere that that's the number one cause of new cases every year, is that people have cold sores and they don't have a cold sore at that moment, but they end up giving, and I know a couple of guys who have HSV1 only, they just have it in the wrong spot. Well, they obviously, were not getting a blowjob from some girl with cold sore.
Right.
She
Yeah.
was shedding.
Oh, okay. Now, take us back to when you were first diagnosed. So you got your diagnosis from your cheating boyfriend who was in Texas. When you found out that you contracted HSV1, how did you respond?
I responded badly, but it was also at the same exact time that I was throwing him out for cheating. So I don't think I ever really got to, in the beginning, deal with that, because I was dealing with so much other betrayal and everything else. So I was so consumed in my feelings about, him cheating on me and losing him and kicking him out, that I don't think that, it was just kind of like one more thing on the pile, versus if I would have just been finding out and having nothing else going on, then I probably could have dealt with it better. But there was no focus at that point in time. It was just everything.
Yeah.
So,
All right. So there's all this stuff happening. You find out, like, what did you tell anyone?
I told my best friend, who, like I said, was a pharmacy assistant, and then
Oh, that was your best friend.
yeah, well,
Okay.
it was my best friend back home. I was still in the military, and then I actually told my best friend who was in the military, who also lived over there by me, and it actually turned out that she had HPV. So she was a great resource, just because it was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm not the only one. Now, she never would have told me that she had HPV, except I was breaking down. So I, tell her that I have HSV. And so, it, even though it's not the same thing, it just, for a moment, makes you feel not so much alone. Yeah. And because you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm not the only one dealing with stuff like this.
So that's the first person you told, right?
Yes.
Okay. So her response to it was, oh my God. Like, there was kind of a shared sense of relief knowing that the other person wasn't alone. How was life for you after your diagnosis?
Well, like I said, it was a big breakup and stuff. So for a while, it was just, no dating, no nothing. Like, I didn't even want to. You date somebody for a couple of years, you're living together, you kind of take a break after that. And like I said, dating after that wasn't really a big deal because of the misinformation. When I would date someone new, if I decided to go there, just tell them, hey, but as long as I'm not having any blisters, we're good to go. And they'd be like, oh, okay. Let me know if you have any.
That's guys, though. Like, guys are always, like, we'd just be, oh, okay, we'll take whatever you say as the word. Like,
Yeah.
we're still getting laid? Cool. No issues there. All right, so how long did it take before you began dating again?
I don't know, probably about a year before I actually started, like, seriously dating. And then I've never been a huge dater at all. I mean, I even to this day, I date maybe one or two people a year, see how it goes, and it usually goes for about 2 weeks, and I'm like, no, this isn't going to work, and so it a lot of times never even gets to the conversation of HSV, because after 2 weeks, I'm like, oh, you're not a match for me. And so, and a lot of times I just kind of take some time off and do my own thing. And I figure if I stumble across somebody, then I stumble across somebody. And if not, whatever.
So now, when you meet guys, are you meeting them online? Are you meeting them just out and about doing your own thing? How do you find yourself in situations where you are dating someone?
I do try online dating. I've done a lot of online dating just because it, for some reason, makes things easier because, when you meet people out in town, you don't necessarily know that they're single or what their intentions are, and people do not approach me. I mean, men hardly ever approach me. Now,
Women do?
no.
The way you said it, it was just
No.
like, men never approach me, but women do.
No. But then I'll meet people later on and, say at a friend's event or something, I meet somebody and then I'll see them somewhere else and they were like, well, I didn't want to approach you because I didn't know if you were single. Well, I didn't know if you were single, so I wasn't giving you the eye. You know what I mean? And so it's like that weird kind of, nobody's getting anywhere because everybody's afraid of everything. Yeah. But, if you go on a dating website, you get a lot of weird stuff, but at the same time, when you do meet somebody who you think you might have some kind of connection with, at least you know they're single. Well, you mainly know that they're single for the most part. Every once in a while, you've got somebody in there that's
someone
not quite dishonest. They're not quite honest.
That's two families. Oh,
yeah.
My goodness. What's the craziest dating situation you've been in? Like when say you meet someone online and you go out, hang out, and you find out like this isn't going to work. What is it that's making you feel that it isn't going to work?
Are we talking first date or the first 2 weeks?
We're talking about your first 2 weeks. Before you cut this person off, what makes you say this is not going to work?
Oh, well, I mean, like a lot of it's personality issues and stuff like that. It's just, I'm a certain way and there's a handful of things that are really important to me. And if I'm not getting that, if you're not doing that handful of things because you want to do them in the beginning, we're probably not a match.
Can we have an example here?
So I'm a phone call girl. Like, I like to talk on the phone. I want to hear your voice. I'm not a texter. I have lost so many relationships after the first you can't even call it a relationship, but after the first 2 weeks, because you meet people who live their whole life looking at their phone. And it's like, no, I want to do stuff or talk to you or whatnot. And so, and I also don't want to be in a relationship where I'm asking for the same thing over and over and over again and I'm trying to change who you are. Mm-hmm. If that's not in your DNA to want to talk to me on the phone, we're probably not a good match.
Right.
Also, no couch potatoes, I mean, I'm a couch potato during the week for the most part, maybe hit a happy hour or something. But, I want to go to see live music. I want to go to the park and go for a walk. I want to go do stuff. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate, but, I want to get up and do stuff. And some people don't want to. At the same time, there's some people that want to be gone all the time, and that's probably not a good mix either. I don't make it to closing time at the bar anymore. I'm tired.
I feel like you just read an entire dating profile description of what it is.
I've written it enough times.
Looking for. So Marie, let's touch on the medical industry then versus the medical industry now. So back then when you found out you contracted herpes 2 decades ago, which I still don't believe you're that old, you were told that you don't shed. I mean, if you don't have sex while you have an outbreak, then you're fine. Now, over time, obviously, you realize that wasn't true. So the information that you received then versus the information that you've received or that you know now, how did you come to acquire that knowledge?
Well, I mean, they gave me, Cyclovir or whatever to cut down on outbreaks, and they told me that if you had severe outbreaks that were frequent enough that they would give you the daily suppressive. So I lied and said that I had frequent severe outbreaks so that they would give me the suppressives, and so they did, and I remember it was probably about, I don't know, probably 13, 14 years ago, because I know it was, a good 6-7 years after I, first acquired it, that I'm just sitting there watching TV and a Valtrex commercial comes on and it says right there that, you can spread herpes without having symptoms. And I'm like, what? And so, I mean, that was a big shocker for me because that's how I learned about shedding.
So in the fine print at the bottom of the screen, it didn't say even through taking Valtrex, it may be possible to spread herpes to others. I remember seeing that very, very small disclaimer at the bottom, and then at the end of the commercial where they speak really, really fast and
Yeah.
say all these side effects or whatnot. So that goes to just show you, like, from the time that you found out, it was, oh, you can't spread it if you take this medication, to when I first heard it, and this was before I had herpes. Like, I remember seeing that commercial and hearing the disclaimer and seeing the disclaimer at the bottom saying, even though ... it may
Yeah.
still be possible to spread.
Yeah, but I mean, the taking of the daily suppressives does reduce that risk, and so that's why I still take them. I mean, I haven't had an outbreak in over a decade, but I still take the suppressives every day, and I always will, because I want to make sure that risk to somebody else is as low as I can make it.
Right. And it's very important to know that the risk is lowered and not eliminated.
Yeah. But, I mean, there's a lot of things that, I mean, you'll never eliminate the risk. It'll always be there, and you're never going to know exactly when it's going to be. But at the same time, there's a lot of things that you can do, and a lot of people don't know that over time, you become less contagious. The virus becomes less active the longer you have it, especially if you're not having outbreaks and that virus is just living in your nerves and your lower back, and it just, once it's kind of dwelling there, it doesn't come out very often.
Now, is that because of, like, a development of the immune system, or is
Part
it
of
just
it is the
virus
immune
is getting
system
old
gets
and dying, or what?
Yeah, no, the immune system gets stronger. The suppressives, kind of keep it in place, and it just the virus itself is less active over time. So I mean, anything I can do to kind of like keep reducing my risk is, what I'm going to keep doing. So I'll keep taking those blue pills for as long as I have to. I don't care.
Yeah. Now, when you said you first were diagnosed, you said that it was on the stomach,
Well,
abdomen
it was
line-ish?
it was in my pubic hair.
Oh, so that's where it was.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like just
No, it
under
was-
the belly button. I was
No,
like,
no,
damn, you
it
can
was
get it there?
just under.
Okay.
Well, it was kind of halfway between his belly button and his,
Got
But it ended up being down in my pubic hair is where I got it.
And then, so it hasn't spread. Like, so I was on Reddit today, and someone asked if you have a cold sore and I guess she was spitting on her hand and masturbating, can you spread herpes from your mouth to your vagina? You the look on your face right now.
It's skin to skin contact, and that's what people need to keep in mind. It is strictly skin to skin contact. That virus dies as soon as it hits air, or whatnot, or goes on a surface or whatever. So if your skin is not touching my skin when I'm shedding, that virus cannot transfer. So I mean, it's just not going to happen.
Okay. So besides the medication, are there any ways to reduce the shedding?
Reduce stress. Oh my gosh. Well, to reduce outbreaks, I don't know if it actually reduces shedding, but I mean, I would assume that if you're reducing outbreaks, you're probably reducing shedding as well. You learn pretty quickly with this that when you are highly stressed, you are going to have an outbreak.
Yeah.
And so if an outbreak stresses you out, you're going to just like keep the cycle going. So, you learn to not sweat the small stuff, do some yoga, take a walk, and really kind of get over yourself, because if you're going to be worked up about everything, you're going to have outbreaks continuously.
Yeah.
So that's the best thing that, kind of try to keep a healthy diet and that kind of thing, but anything you can do to reduce your stress will help tremendously.
Those articles that I see online, you can find them just about anywhere. These 5 foods reduce outbreaks. Like, are there any foods like that, or is it just more so a thing of making sure that you're getting good nutrition and taking care of your body?
I think the healthier you are, the healthier your immune system's going to be. So you try to eat healthy, eat some vegetables, get your vitamin C or whatever, because if your body's healthy, your immune system's going to be stronger too. But I don't have any food sensitivities myself. I have heard people say about nuts and those kind of things, and the reason for that is arginine. And a lot of people don't realize that arginine, and I'm probably saying that word wrong, but but it actually can aggravate it and cause more outbreaks. That's why we have a lot of issues, and I've talked to different people in the past who, men who use supplements, a lot of those supplements are really high in arginine. There's actually some articles in Men's Health and stuff that I've seen actually when I was helping a friend with some stuff. And he couldn't figure out why he was having so many outbreaks because he had never had them before. Well, he was taking these supplements that were high in arginine, and all of a sudden he was having outbreaks left and right. Got off the supplements, wasn't having them anymore.
Now let's go ahead and throw that disclaimer in here that we neither of us are medical professionals unless that's like what you actually do in your consulting. You know, consult
No,
All right,
no,
okay,
no.
okay.
No,
Well,
that's like I said, I read it in Men's Health.
yeah, so it's just a matter of going out and seeking information, and I mean, this is 100% just based on our experiences, so let me just make sure and throw that out there.
And be careful where you get the information from, because a lot of it is just flat wrong. I always suggest the CDC. If you want
CDC?
numbers, the Centers
Center for
Centers
okay.
for Disease Control. I mean, like, it doesn't get more legit than that. So, so I base a lot of my personal information off of their numbers, because you can read article after article, and if it's an article about somebody's personal experience, great, because that's their personal experience. But when they're spouting numbers, you know, you better make sure there's a qualified basis to those, because, you know, there's a lot of misinformation out there.
So much. And as someone who, you know, if you get diagnosed, the first thing you want to do, you want to find some sort of assurance. You want to be like, oh, am I sure? Or you want to find a cure. You don't want this. You want to get rid of it. Like, all those things. So people are desperate to find information that tells the story that they want to hear. So it's like, oh, well, if I just do these things, then I won't spread it, or it'll go away, or whatever. But the main thing really is to educate and inform yourself. You know, find the experiences of other people, or like Marie just said, check out the Center for Disease Control for all of the stats and numbers, and go from there. There was some other information that you had. You were talking about HPV a little bit. What did we say? This was before we started.
Well, we had talked about some different things, and you know, in dating, you know, you try to, I mean, I've dated people before that said that they didn't have anything, and you send them and you say, hey, you know, you need to go get tested, you need to go get, and if you say to the doctor, please test me for everything, they're going to test you for 5 things, and that's syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia, AIDS, or HIV, and I don't know what the other one is, but it's not the full 10. So you have to actually request the 10 panel in order to get it. And that will include everything.
Do you know why they only test for those 5?
Because the rest of them, there's not much they can do about it, and they don't consider most of them life-threatening. So they test for what they can cure and what they find to be the most life-threatening.
Okay.
So there's the different hepatitis and stuff. I don't know which one they test for on the 5 panel, but you're not getting tested for all of them unless you're getting the 10 panel. And so a lot of people, they're going to get tested, and they're, you know, the doctor's giving them a clean bill of health, and they think they're good to go.
Yeah.
What they don't realize is they were never tested for herpes at all, and because most doctors just consider it a skin condition. And then what they also don't understand is that there's no valid test in men for HPV.
Yeah,
Women can get.
I did not know that. I didn't know that men. But there's a vaccine for HPV now, right?
There is.
Okay, so as long as women get their HPV vaccine, or even guys too, what?
But
What's that look?
I'm pretty sure the HPV vaccine is only for certain strains, and there's like 80 strains of HPV, and I think it's geared. Don't quote me on this because I could be totally wrong. I'm not totally educated on HPV, but I'm pretty sure it's only for certain strains that it will block, and those are the cancer-causing strains. And the cancer-causing strains are not even necessarily the wart-causing strains. And so, you know, for men, if they don't have warts, they may not have any idea that they're passing HPV to other people. You know, it's kind of the same way. A lot of people have it, and they don't have any symptoms, but since there's no way to test for men, you know, no man can honestly sit there and tell you that he's 100% clean because he doesn't know.
Yeah, and everyone, well, some people take that as, you know, okay, well, we're good, we can have sex, whatever, but I think a more important comment to make here is that not everyone is comfortable with asking their partner to get tested or even bringing up the conversation at all. You know, when you're in the moment or when the moment's coming up, like that's the last thing you want to have. And you just assume that no, the person that you're sleeping with doesn't have anything. And that's really not always the case. I mean, look at us.
Yeah. Well, most people assume if I don't have any symptoms, I'm good to go. And so why would I go get tested if I don't have any symptoms?
And then even like if I don't have any symptoms, there's also a way for you to internalize it as like a hair bump or something. Like people will have a hair bump and be like, oh, it's just a hair bump, and like psychologically convince themselves, okay, this is a hair bump, I can go through with this, bam, and then later find out, oh shit, that's not a hair bump, or not even want to investigate any further. So
Trust me, the first time I asked for the blood test, once I found out that there was a blood test that could tell me the type, I had my doctor do it, and I'd probably had it for 10 years before. And there was that little piece of me that was hoping all that stuff before that happened was wrong. Maybe it wasn't really that. Maybe it was something else. And I even got my hopes up, and those test results came back, and she was like, you got type 1 and 2. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, never mind.
Now, with type 1, type 2, what's the difference?
Type 1, again, not a medical professional, just from my experience and everything I've read over the years. Type 2, more aggressive.
I mean, from what I hear, like, you might be more qualified than some medical professionals.
Well, I've educated my doctor on a lot of different things because she doesn't know.
This is the first time I've heard that. This is not the first time I've heard that. And I don't know if it's just that, you know, like you said, we are only testing for the 5 more dangerous STDs unless you ask for the 10 panel. And maybe medical professionals are just not or needing to be educated on the other 5 because it's not that big of a deal, so to speak. So, you know, perhaps it's just a matter of out of sight, out of mind. Like, this isn't important, so there's no need to really educate myself or inform anyone on it because it's just such a rare occurrence, or we don't need to talk about it. So it's more important for me to be informed on these things in the event that I need to discuss this with you as a medical professional.
Well, a lot of doctors will tell you the stigma is worse than the disease. So why even bother telling you? Why even bother testing you when there's nothing they can really do about it? If you have no symptoms, you know, why give you that information and the stigma when, you know, more than half the population has at least one of them. So you're not rare, you know, at all. But yeah, a lot of doctors just, they aren't up on it, but why would they be? You know, if they're trying to be up on cancer or, you know, like, you know, serious stuff, you know, why would they put a lot of time, and unless they were specifically geared towards STDs, you know, why would they put a lot of time into that information when they could be, you know, learning more about other things?
So in closing, what do you, looking back, what do you wish that someone would have told you at the time of your diagnosis, the first and second time?
Well, really, I mean, I guess I just wish that somebody would have told me how common it was. Because I felt like I was the one person in the entire United States that was dealing with this, you know, other than the guy who cheated on me or whatever. But, you know, you feel like you're so completely alone when you don't realize it's, you know, 1 in 4 people have type 2, you know, 1 in 5 people, depending on which reference you want to go with. And, you know, more than half the population has type 1, just depending on which area they might have it in. So if somebody would have told me that, I would have never felt so isolated.
Yeah.
And that would have been the best thing for me, really.
Now, I don't think we went into detail about the difference between type 1 and type 2. You said that type 2 is more aggressive.
That's what I've always heard, and that's all the stories and just people that I've talked to throughout the years. I mean, if you have a cold sore and it's one bump, it's probably type 1. But you've seen people that have cold sores that have clusters of blisters around their mouth. It's probably type 2. Now, that's not a medical opinion in any way, but for most people that I've met that actually have the condition and know what they have, that's been the case. And most people have said that type 1, if they only have type 1, isn't very aggressive. They might have a blister or two, and that's it. And that's how my situation was in the beginning. But people who have type 2 from the very beginning, they sometimes have much, much more severe reactions. So that's been my basis. Now you could have type 1 or type 2 in either area, or on your hand, or get Whitlow. There's all kinds of different things, but for the most part, that's what everybody kind of has come to the conclusion that type 1 is just less aggressive.
Okay. Now, having herpes hasn't affected you at all. I mean, outside of the original diagnosis, you had so much going on.
No, and the stigma bothered me for a while, and now it's to the point where I know how many people have it. I know how common it is. I have friends who have it. I have lots of friends who have it, in different groups. And
we're friends.
Yeah. And so it's not really even anything that I think about. I take my pill every day. If I happen to date someone who says that they don't have anything, then we have the conversation. I encourage them to go get tested, which is not always something somebody wants to do, but I just explain to them, I need to know what our starting point is, because there's a lot of things that that there are no symptoms for. And so you could have anything, and condoms don't help with everything. I mean, even, I'm sorry, but I'm kind of a frisky girl when it comes to sex, and I don't want anything in my throat either. You know what I mean? It's like, so a condom's not necessarily, and it's just not as much fun, given a oral sex with a condom, or, so I want to know what my starting point is, so that I can have a real, true, honest relationship and not have to worry about those things. So I think both people always need to know their starting point.
Good. So you would say, I don't know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but for everyone to get tested, or if you are diagnosed, encourage your partner to get tested. Well, actually get tested together would probably even be a more accurate statement, so that you have a good starting point sexually. So sex life hasn't changed at all.
No.
Things are good.
No, things are good.
Good.
It's not as frequent as I'd like, but
But that's just from you. That's just from
that's
you.
because I don't date enough.
Well, I mean, people don't want to talk on the phone. Like, obviously, that's the way to get in your pants. So.
I know, right? And I tell people that. So, like, you'd think that they would want to, but no.
Just so much effort to be on the phone.
I know, right?
Even though your phone's right in your face. Like, why do I want to talk on it when I can just use my fingers?
I find it exhausting to text.
It is.
It's
especially
horrible.
Because, like, you're more than likely doing something else while you're doing it. If you're not with the person, talking to them, or on the phone with them, we live in a society where you're praised for having a lot going on at once, for being able to multitask. All right, I'm sitting here, I'm reading a book, I've got headphones on, I'm also texting, and I've got the TV on in the background, and I'm watching the news or something. Like, that's just the world that we live in. So to be able to find someone who's willing to sit down and focus and do one thing at a time, have a phone conversation, and be in that phone conversation is something that's rather rare. So
yeah, I'm all about being in the moment, whatever moment that is, whether I'm watching a movie, or I'm talking on the phone, or I'm having dinner. But it's
talking on a podcast.
Exactly, right? But it's 100 times harder to find somebody who's actually a personal match for you than it is to find somebody who's okay with age. I mean, like, it just really is.
That's a really good point. That's a very good point. So say that one more time, just for everyone else.
It's literally 100 times harder to find somebody who's a good match for you personally than it is to find somebody who's okay with age. I mean, over 20 years, I have disclosed at least 40 times. You have to figure at least 40 times, and I think I had 2 run for the hills. And both of those were when I was younger, and they were young, and
so
there wasn't a lot of information.
You gotta shoot your shot.
Yeah. I have had people who want more information. I have had people who wanted to take things slow and make sure that it was a relationship before they took that risk. I'm all about any of that, But, as far as anybody having a really severe, oh, wait, I can't do that, that just never happens, really.
Yeah.
But disclosing is one of those things. If you make it into a huge, horrible thing, they're going to think it's a huge, horrible thing. So trust me, I did disclose before, bawling in tears, that like it's the most devastating thing in the world, because I was so afraid to tell them. And so, of course, if it's this horrible thing that's making me bawl, then no, they don't want it. You know what I mean? But if you're realistic about it and like, these are the facts, this is how it is, and just tell them, the risk and kind of remain calm about it, then you're probably going to be okay.
Good. Okay.
You'll be able to have a sensible conversation about it at least.
And that's an important topic as well. I mean, that can be a whole entire different show on just disclosing. Do you have any tips for anyone disclosing to a partner? Like, would you say, for me personally, it's been easier as I've told people close to me, like, hey, this is something that's happened. Like, I've told friends. First people found out were my mom and my grandmother, because I woke up and I was like, what the fuck? And got driven to urgent care. But it gets easier each time. And telling someone close to you who you don't have to worry about judging you. So, like, do you have any starting tips for people who might be like, nope, not telling anybody, I'm going to be single forever, I'm not going through that?
Not a lot of my friends or family know, per se, but, my biggest things are stay calm, know the facts. Because if you know that 1 in 4 people have this, 1 in 4 people have HSV2. More than half the population has HSV1. So if you're sitting there talking to someone who's doing online dating and they have had at least 4 dates this year, then they have already met someone who has it, whether that person knows that they had it or not.
Right.
So you're not that rare, and you need to keep that into perspective. And if you can explain to people, hey, 1 in 4 people have this. 80% of those folks have no idea that they have it. I'm lucky that I know I have it, so I can take medicine. So I'm less risk to you than somebody that doesn't know they have it.
Yeah.
And so, just get used to those facts and figures and kind of, once you realize that you're not that alone in this and you realize how many people have it, it's easier to talk to other people about it.
Good.
So.
That's a good place to leave off. I said that we were going to be closing with this, and we talked for like 10 minutes.
I talk a lot.
No, it's
Can't
fine.
help it.
It's fine, because I think that the more information that we have, the more resources available, the more factual information that we can come across and spread around the world, the more helpful. So I'm sure that this is going to help somebody, and really that's what it's about. It's about at least one person coming across this and being like, okay, I can do this in whatever form that may be, whether it be your story or someone else's story who started in the beginning, however. So that's what we're doing this for, and I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me, invite me to your wonderful home, and sharing your story with everyone who listens to this podcast.
You're welcome. It was easy.
You think so?
Yeah, I talk a lot, so.
Well, hopefully I can get more people on here who have experience with other STDs, and I do want this to evolve into something where I talk about mental health, different other disorders and conditions that aren't just STD related. I mean, we can talk about like bone shavings. You're just gonna sit there and look like that. We've got a voyeur in the room who wants to remain anonymous. We're just not gonna say anything else. But this concludes this episode of Something Positive for Positive People with Marie. I'm gonna work on an outro. We'll figure it out.